In a quiet town nestled between rolling hills and ancient forests, there lived a young man named Kiran. At 24, his life was a testament to struggle and perseverance. Each day he toiled under the watchful eye of a strict employer, earning barely enough to keep himself fed and sheltered. Orphaned at a young age, Kiran had no family to turn to, no shoulder to lean on when times got tough. His parents had passed away years ago, leaving him to navigate the harsh realities of life alone. His days followed a monotonous rhythm: wake before dawn, work until dusk, return to his modest dwelling, prepare a simple meal, eat in silence, and then surrender to sleep, only to repeat the cycle when morning came. Dreams and aspirations had long been luxuries he couldn't afford. Hope for a better future, that had abandoned him years ago, like a fair-weather friend who departs at the first sign of hardship. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at work, Kiran sat down for his modest dinner. He had prepared 4 chapatis and a small portion of vegetables, a meal that would just barely satisfy his hunger. But as he returned from washing his hands, something strange caught his attention. One of his chapatis was missing. He counted again, 1, 2, 3, but the 4th was nowhere to be seen. How odd, he thought, dismissing it as a mistake. Perhaps he had only made 3 chapatis after all. Exhaustion had a way of playing tricks on the mind. The next evening, the same peculiar incident occurred. Kiran distinctly remembered making 4 chapatis. Yet when he returned from washing his hands, only 3 remained. This time he was certain he wasn't mistaken. By the 3rd evening, curiosity had gotten the better of him. Determined to solve this mystery, Kiran prepared his meal as usual, but remained vigilant. He pretended to leave for washing his hands, but instead hid behind a curtain, his eyes fixed on his plate. To his astonishment, a fat, grey mouse scurried out from a small hole in the wall, approached his plate, and began to drag away one of the chapatis. Kiran lunged forward, catching the mouse between his hands. "Aha, so you're the thief who's been stealing my food," he exclaimed, ready to deal with the intruder. But what happened next left Kiran speechless. The mouse, trapped between his palms, spoke in a clear, human voice. "Brother," the mouse said, its tiny eyes looking directly into Kiran's, "why do you stop me? I take only what fate has given me. Please let me have my share." Kiran nearly dropped the mouse in shock. A talking mouse. Had his loneliness finally driven him to madness? You can speak?" he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, I can," replied the mouse calmly, "and I can see the hardship in your eyes, but I, too, must survive." Kiran's initial shock gave way to frustration. "I barely have enough to eat myself," he said. "Every day I make 4 chapatis just to survive, and you steal one. My life is already difficult enough without having to share my meager meals with a mouse." The mouse nodded, as if understanding the weight of Kiran's words. "I understand your struggles, young man. Life has not been kind to you. But I know someone who can guide you, someone who can provide answers to the questions that burden your heart." "Who?" Kiran asked. His curiosity piqued, despite his skepticism. "His name is Gautam Buddha," the mouse replied. "He resides in an ashram 3 days' journey from here. If you seek wisdom and guidance, go to him, and he will show you the way." Kiran released the mouse, watching as it scurried back to its hole. A talking mouse recommending he seek out Gautam Buddha. It sounded absurd. And yet, what did he have to lose? His life was a cycle of drudgery with no end in sight. Perhaps this strange encounter was the universe's way of nudging him toward a different path. After a night of contemplation, Kiran made his decision. He approached his employer and requested a 5-day leave, a bold ask, given the man's strict nature. To his surprise, his request was granted, albeit with a warning that his wages would be docked. With a small bundle of provisions and the clothes on his back, Kiran set out on his journey to find Gautam Buddha. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, a flicker of hope burned within him. The first day of his journey was uneventful, a long walk through familiar landscapes that gradually gave way to unfamiliar terrain. As dusk approached, Kiran found himself in front of a grand mansion, its imposing structure a stark contrast to the humble dwellings he was accustomed to. Tired and hungry, he approached the massive wooden doors and knocked, hoping for a place to rest for the night. The door was opened by an elderly man, his attire and bearing suggesting wealth and status, yet his eyes carried a profound sadness. "Good evening, young traveler," the man greeted Kiran. "What brings you to my doorstep at this hour?" "I seek shelter for the night," Kiran replied respectfully. "I am on a journey and have nowhere to rest." The wealthy man's face softened. "Of course you are welcome to stay, But may I ask where your journey takes you? I am going to meet Gautam Buddha, Kiran explained, still feeling somewhat foolish about following the advice of a talking mouse. To his surprise, the man's face lit up with hope, the sadness in his eyes momentarily replaced by a spark of excitement. That is wonderful news, he exclaimed. I have a favor to ask of you, young man. My daughter, my only child, has not spoken a word in 20 years. The best physicians have examined her, but none can determine the cause of her silence. If you are to meet the enlightened one, please ask him when my daughter will speak again. Kiran, moved by the man's plea, agreed to carry his question to Gautam Buddha. That night, he was treated to a feast fit for royalty and given a comfortable bed to sleep in luxuries he had never experienced before. The next morning, refreshed and with renewed determination, Kiran continued his journey. The path now led him toward a treacherous mountain range, its peaks disappearing into the clouds. As he stood at the base, contemplating the daunting climb ahead, he noticed a figure sitting in meditation nearby. The man, dressed in simple robes with intricate symbols embroidered on them, opened his eyes as Kiran approached. His gaze was penetrating, as if he could see through Kiran's very soul. Where are you headed, young one? The man asked, his voice carrying an otherworldly quality. I am on my way to meet Gautam Buddha, Kiran replied, feeling a strange reverence in the presence of this mysterious figure. The man nodded slowly. I am a magician, he revealed. For 1,000 years I have meditated here, seeking to ascend to heaven. Yet, despite my powers and my devotion, the gates of heaven remain closed to me. If you are to meet the enlightened one, please ask him when I will be free from this earthly realm. Kiran, astounded by the magician's claim of living for a millennium, promised to carry his question to Gautam Buddha. In return, the magician used his mystical powers to help Kiran safely cross the treacherous mountain path. A journey that would have taken days was completed in mere hours. As the mountains gave way to flatlands, Kiran found himself facing another obstacle, a wide, raging river with no visible means to cross. The water rushed with such force that attempting to swim across would be suicide. As he stood at the riverbank, contemplating his next move, the water began to ripple strangely. To his amazement, a massive tortoise, larger than any he had ever seen or heard of, emerged from the depths. Why do you stand at the edge of my domain, human? The tortoise asked, its voice deep and resonant. Recovering from his initial shock, this was, after all, the third talking creature he had encountered in as many days. Kiran explained, I am trying to reach the ashram of Gautam Buddha, but this river blocks my path. The tortoise's ancient eyes seemed to brighten at the mention of Buddha. For 500 years I have dwelled in these waters, awaiting my transformation into a dragon. It is said that only when I become a dragon can I ascend to the celestial realms. If you are to meet the enlightened one, please ask him when my transformation will be complete. Kiran, now growing accustomed to the strange requests, agreed to carry the tortoise's question to Gautam Buddha. In gratitude, the massive creature offered to carry him across the river on its back, ensuring a safe passage through the treacherous waters. By the third day, Kiran finally reached the ashram where Gautam Buddha resided. The place exuded a sense of peace and tranquility that Kiran had never experienced before. Devotees from all walks of life had gathered to listen to Buddha's teachings, their faces reflecting a serenity that seemed almost otherworldly. Kiran joined the assembly, listening intently as Buddha spoke of suffering, its causes, and the path to liberation. The words resonated deeply within him, offering insights into his own struggles and the nature of existence itself. When the discourse concluded, devotees were invited to approach Buddha with their questions. It was then that Kiran learned a crucial detail. Buddha would answer only 3 questions from each seeker. This revelation presented Kiran with a dilemma. He had 4 questions to ask: the wealthy man's question about his daughter, the magician's question about ascending to heaven, the tortoise's question about transformation, and his own question about finding purpose and happiness in a life filled with hardship. As he waited for his turn, Kiran wrestled with his thoughts. Which question should he drop? The promises he had made weighed heavily on his conscience, but his own quest for answers had been the driving force behind his journey. When his turn came, Kiran approached Buddha with reverence. The enlightened one's presence was both humbling and uplifting. After a moment of silent contemplation, Kiran made his decision. He would sacrifice his own question and fulfill the promises he had made to those who had helped him on his journey. Enlightened one, Kiran began, I come with questions from those I met on my journey here. Buddha nodded, his eyes reflecting compassion and understanding. A wealthy man's daughter has not spoken for 20 years. When will she speak again? Kiran asked. Buddha's reply was simple yet profound. The owner's daughter will speak the day she gets married. Kiran continued, a magician has meditated for 1,000 years, seeking to ascend to heaven. When will he be free? Buddha's answer was equally direct. The magician will ascend to heaven once he lets go of his staff. Finally, Kiran asked, a tortoise has waited for 500 years to transform into a dragon. When will this transformation occur? Buddha's response was clear. The tortoise will become a dragon when it removes its shell. With these answers, Kiran bowed in gratitude and prepared to leave. As he turned to go, Buddha called out to him. Young man, Buddha said, his voice gentle yet powerful. You had a question of your own, yet you chose to ask on behalf of others. Remember this, true happiness is found not in seeking answers for oneself, but in selflessly helping others find their way. These words struck a chord within Kiran, offering a wisdom he hadn't explicitly sought but desperately needed. With a heart full of gratitude, he began his journey back, eager to deliver the answers to those who awaited them. When Kiran reached the river, the tortoise was waiting, its ancient eyes filled with anticipation. What did the Enlightened One say? The tortoise asked eagerly. Kiran relayed Buddha's words. He said, you will become a dragon when you remove your shell. The tortoise's eyes widened with realization. For 500 years, it had never considered that its shell, the very thing that defined it as a tortoise, was also the barrier to its transformation. With trembling determination, the tortoise began to shed its shell, a process that seemed both painful and liberating. As the last piece fell away, a blinding light enveloped the creature. When the light faded, in place of the tortoise stood a magnificent dragon, its scales shimmering with all the colors of the rainbow. Thank you, young human, the dragon said, its voice now more powerful and resonant. For centuries, I clung to what I thought was my identity, never realizing it was my prison. As a token of my gratitude, I leave you these. Before soaring into the sky with a mighty roar, the dragon left behind a pile of radiant pearls, each one glowing with an inner light. Kiran gathered the pearls, amazed at their beauty and the transformation he had witnessed. Continuing his journey, Kiran next encountered the magician, still meditating at the base of the mountain. What did the Enlightened One say? The magician asked, his eyes reflecting 1,000 years of waiting. Kiran shared Buddha's answer. He said you will ascend to heaven once you let go of your staff. The magician looked at the staff in his hand, a symbol of his power and identity as a magician. For a millennium, he had held on to it, never considering that it might be the very thing anchoring him to the earthly realm. With a deep breath, the magician handed his staff to Kiran. Take it, he said. It has served me well, but now it serves a new purpose to remind you that sometimes we must let go of what we hold dear to achieve what we truly desire. The moment the staff left his hand, the magician's body began to glow with an ethereal light. Slowly, he ascended into the heavens, his face beaming with peace and fulfillment. Before disappearing completely, he blessed Kiran, thanking him for being the messenger of his liberation. Finally, Kiran returned to the mansion where the wealthy man and his silent daughter awaited. The man greeted him eagerly, hope evident in his eyes. What did the Enlightened One say about my daughter? He asked. Kiran shared Buddha's words. He said your daughter will speak the day she gets married. The wealthy man's eyes widened with understanding. For years he had consulted physicians and scholars, never considering that his daughter's silence might be tied to her future rather than her past. Looking at Kiran with newfound respect and gratitude, the man made an unexpected proposal. Then let her marry you, young man. You have brought hope where there was none. You have shown kindness and selflessness in your quest. Who better to be her husband than one who has walked with Buddha's wisdom? Before Kiran could respond, the daughter, who had been listening silently, approached him. Her eyes, though she had not spoken in 2 decades, conveyed a depth of emotion that words could not capture. The wedding was arranged with haste but celebrated with grandeur. The entire town gathered to witness the union, curious about the silent bride and the humble groom, who had somehow won the favor of one of the wealthiest men in the region. The moment the wedding ceremony was complete, the bride turned to Kiran and spoke her first words in 20 years. You are the one who came to our home that night. I knew then that you would bring change. Her voice, though unused for so long, was clear and melodious, bringing tears to her father's eyes and astonishment to all heard it. Kiran's life had transformed in ways he could never have imagined. From a struggling young man with no family and little hope, he had become a man of means, married to a beautiful and now vocal woman, with a loving father-in-law who treated him as his own son. The dragon's pearls, when appraised, were found to be of immense value, providing Kiran with wealth beyond his wildest dreams. The magician's staff, imbued with ancient powers, gave him the ability to help those in need, healing the sick and bringing comfort to the suffering. But more valuable than the material wealth or magical powers was the wisdom Kiran had gained on his journey. He had learned that true fulfillment comes not from seeking answers for oneself, but from helping others find their way. He had discovered that sometimes the greatest gifts come when we least expect them, often as a result of our kindness and selflessness. In the years that followed, Kiran used his newfound resources to establish schools and hospitals, to feed the hungry and shelter the homeless. He shared Buddha's teachings with all who would listen, emphasizing the importance of compassion, selflessness, and the courage to let go of what holds us back. And every evening, as he sat down for dinner with his wife and father-in-law, he would set aside a small portion of food, a chapati, and some vegetables, and place it near the small hole in the wall.